meditation has been my method for responding to that question, what is a good life? And so one thing I think that's so important about it is that rather than staying in my conceptual mind about what is good and how should I live, that I quiet that conceptual mind down and become one with my body, with my breath, with the here and now. And in that experience of here and now, there's a sensation of satisfaction, of fulfillment, and even of goodness.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Diane Musho Hamilton. Diane is an award-winning mediator and a teacher of Zen meditation. She received Dharma transmission from Genpo Merzel Roshi in 2006. Diane served as the Director of Dispute Resolution for the Utah Judiciary from 1994 to 1999, mediating many matters, from simple neighborhood disputes to complex multi-party negotiations. She was most recognized for her skills in facilitating difficult conversations about race, gender, and religion in Utah. She began working with Ken Wilber and the Integral Institute in 2004 and has held transformative containers for many people interested in their development for 15 years. She is a co-founder of Two Arrows Zen, a center for Zen study and practice in Utah. She is the author of 3 books on conflict resolution, relationships, and communication. Her latest book is Waking Up and Growing Up, Spiritual Cross-Training for an Evolving World, co-authored with Gabriel Wilson. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Broderick.
How are you?
I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
That's good. You're delighted to be here. That opens us up for a fun conversation.
Yeah.
I like to encourage guests to let's play, let's have fun, let's play, let's explore ideas. Sometimes we forget to do that.
Let's do it.
It's a playful conversation exploring an important subject of this concept of this idea of living well. Okay. I know I just read that bio, but I also like guests to introduce themselves because the bio, it says one thing, but in a moment, introducing yourself can be a little different. So it's nice for the audience to hear you do that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I'm a cowgirl from the American West. I grew up riding horses. I was a rodeo queen as a teenager. Awesome. But I suffered the loss of some close friends when I was in my teen years, and so I became very philosophical and a seeker in my early years when I was in school, when I was in college. And so I studied philosophy and I read a lot of literature. But eventually I was just pulled to the practice of meditation. Because meditation seemed to address my existential anxiety in a certain way better than anything else that I'd encountered. And so in 1984, I applied to Naropa Institute. I received a master's degree in Buddhist psychology, and then found my way to doing dispute resolution, as you pointed out. So that I say often that I'm a talented mediator with no training, not very little training, and I've got so much training as a meditator, and I don't have a drop of natural talent. But I've been doing both for a long time, and I've also gotten to the point where I see that they're very much the same thing. That with meditation, our body, speech, mind, and the environment become one, and in mediation, we're bringing basically disputing parties together, where the only thing that they're aware of is how different they are and how much they're conflicting. And what I do as a mediator is help them to discover their commonality and hopefully bring them to an agreement and restore some harmony. So that restoration of harmony and that balance that meditation offers us is the same thing that happens in the mediation process when it goes well. Beautiful. And then after that, so I started studying. I started my practice in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but then I graduated. I didn't graduate. I transitioned to Zen, And I've been practicing since I was 22. I'm 67 now. And I also encountered Ken Wilber, which you and I have in common, in 2004. And I was hired by his institute I was one of the trainers in his transformational workshops, and I did the meditation and some of the facilitated processes. And I really saw my role with Ken to take little tidbits, but important ones from his theory, and then really translate them into the experience so people understood why they were important. And Ken and I still work together. It's been over 20 years now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I am excited to see what comes out of this conversation with that background. And yes, we do have Ken Wilber in common. Definitely one of those big minds that has transformed.
The big mind.
The big mind has transformed a lot of the way that a lot of us think. And like he says, he has a map, and everybody got something right to say.
Yep, that's right. Everybody's got a piece of the truth.
Yeah, got a little piece. And how do we tease that all out and separate the stuff that's, not worthy, I suppose.
Yeah, he's the original inclusion trainer.
Yeah, I know it's really great, and it just expands your viewpoint and perspective. So I that's why I'm excited to have this conversation, because I can imagine that there are so many different angles that you look at this idea, this question. And I'd like to start this conversation off in the beginning. What does living well mean to you? What is a good life? What makes life worth living? You kind of use those questions interchangeably there to kind of get this conversation going.
Well, I think, what comes up for me first, Broderick, I appreciate you asking me the question, because it's nice to consider these things together. I think that was the question that was compelling me after I suffered the death of, these friends of mine when I was a teenager, and I was in school, and I really didn't know the answer to that question. I didn't know how to respond to the fact that our lives are impermanent and that we experience suffering, and that, being a good, ethical person doesn't always necessarily seem to result in great outcomes for everyone. In fact, right now in our political world, it seems like corruption is the order of the day. And it's just so startling because, you thought the American system had kind of set itself up so as not to be subject to, to these, to just these basic, less than desirable impulses, that we have as human beings. So my approach to answering that question was to for whatever reason, I had an instinct towards meditation, and meditation has been my method for responding to that question. What is a good life? And so, one thing I think that's so important about it is that rather than staying in my conceptual mind about what is good and how should I live, that I quiet that conceptual mind down and become one with my body, with my breath, with the here and now. And in that experience of here and now, there's a sensation of satisfaction, of fulfillment, and even of goodness. There's even that things are okay. So becoming one, or there are different ways to say it. Some people use the word whole. Some people say coherent. But so that my mind and my life are the same thing. My practice and my life are one thing, is the heart of what makes a good life for me. Everything that's born out of that coherence has, feels like it's of a piece instead of all fragmented and distorted, you could say. So that's certainly the basis of it for me.
Rooted in the experience,
Yes.
the moment-to-moment experience. And so as you're saying that, and how meditation brings you to that space, and how when we quieten our mind that engages in conceptual exploration, we experience a life that is good, a moment that is good. And how do we increase the likelihood of having those moments? I know meditation does, a meditation practice, but that's the question. And I think even though because I'm with you on that, quietening down our minds and being really present. And a good life is an experience. It's rooted in the moment to moment experience.
Yeah.
Yet you and I are having this conversation, engaging and playing with words, exploring concepts.
We are.
And I think that has value because it helps us move in a direction that increase the likelihood of experiencing moments of goodness. So what does that, so I know meditation is a part of that for you. What are some things that a person can do to help facilitate this or increase the likelihood of having this experience?
Well, I think the first thing, of course, is to make relationship a deeper relationship to oneself, because that's where the key is if I'm at home in my own skin, that just helps with everything. And I think sometimes people, they might have an agenda of achievement, or they could have an agenda of that involves a certain amount of striving. Perhaps they're engaged in getting more, getting better, whatever it happens to be. But I would really invite people to look at the kinds of moments where this sudden sensation of well-being and goodness and fulfillment just overcomes them. And it can be very, very simple. There's a study that says that looking out at the horizon line is really deep, kind of in our evolutionary nature. And that when we look out at a horizon line at the end of the day, or even on a long drive, that you feel the system quiet down. And you feel this kind of, anxiety or worry subside, and that quality of coherence in the moment is there. And so realizing that it doesn't have to be through meditation. It can be through when you spend time with your pet, or a lot of people, as you know, when they walk in nature, they have that experience. So really kind of developing a repertoire of what those activities are that you particularly engage, that bring your body, speech, and mind into one and really settle your heart. So that you're able to relax some of the burden of our time, and some of the burden of the challenges that we all feel, and the disappointments that we've all suffered, and the heartbreaks that we've all endured. That there still is something very deep and abiding in who each of us is, that we can count on. But we have to find that for ourselves. Nobody else can tell us what that is. Then the second thing I would say is that there's a colleague and a friend of mine named Dr. Roger Walsh, and he wrote a book called Essential Spirituality. And he really makes the point that if you want to cultivate the good life, and you want to cultivate these types of values and this way of being, that leads to virtue, or leads to wholeness, that surrounding yourself by people that have the qualities that you're trying to embody is really important. Like, we know that, but sometimes we forget that. We'll spend time in relationships that are stressful, or there was just too much complaint, or there's maybe, we're finding that we're in old habit patterns, but we still kind of cling to those. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't endure in relationships, even sometimes ones that can be unpleasant, especially our family, but that to really be clear about what it matters to you, and to surround yourself with those people that embody that which matters to you. So that seems really important to me. And then I would say, just for the third little piece of advice about the good life, it always has to do with our life purpose. So if I'm at home in my own skin, and if I'm surrounded by people that both support and challenge me in ways that are good for me, then the next place I look is to the world, and what is it that I do in relationship to the world? A woman asked me recently on a course that I was doing, she said, how can you talk about abundance when what is happening in Gaza, and that's just, and I had to say to her, our practice and our aspiration wouldn't be worth beans, really wouldn't be worth much at all, except that what we're doing is so needed in the world. But then we have this idea that, somehow we're going to be able to fix it or cure it. And we take on lots of different ideas about how we can contribute and what our job is. And then we experience more stress. So it's really a process of getting very, very clear with oneself what your innate talents and skills are, what you're here to do, and finding the place to offer that, and finding the people to offer it to. And, there's a beautiful saying in Tibetan Buddhism. They say, never transfer the load of an ox to a cow.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that the problems of the world are really the problems for the enlightened mind, not for the individual ego.
Mm-hmm.
And the enlightened mind knows that we're part of a much greater system, and that it's up to all of us, not just one of us, to make a difference.
Yeah, I love it. It's like I use the word, we have a responsibility to do those things that you're saying, to get to know ourselves, to try to understand ourselves, to try to find what our gifts and talents are, bring that into the world. I can't make the world be other than what it is.
That's
But what I can do is bring the love that I have into the world to the best of my ability.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it can look different, at different times, in different ways. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the world is, Gaza is one place. Sudan is another place. I'm sure we can rattle off all kinds of other places. My kitchen. I know, right?
Yeah. With my husband when we're grumpy.
Life is, there is suffering in life. Life is uncomfortable.
Yes,
there's discomfort in life. And then
that's right.
There's times when it's really bad in certain situations, but it doesn't stop me from, say, for using what you said, having a conversation about abundance and the importance of that. Or having this conversation. Do we not have this conversation? I think we are all interdependent. And what you and I do, has an impact on the field. If I see that the world is troubled, what can I do? If I have that awareness, what can I do, starting with myself, to try to transform myself? Because I'm a part of the world.
That's right.
I'm linked into the world.
Yeah.
I have an influence on this web. What can I do? And I'm like, if I have that awareness, what can I do to enhance my capacity to bring about more goodness in the world?
Absolutely.
In my little space, in my little life. But my little life is a big life, because that little life is having an impact on the field of this interconnected field of being that we're all a part of, that we all share. And I love that. I love what you're saying, because, starting with oneself, sometimes we forget that.
Yeah.
And it actually starts with us, because what can happen, we can become overly self-righteous about things and about how we think the world should be, when we haven't done enough self-reflection and come to have a deeper sensitivity of ourselves and what we can bring into the world. And maybe that'll help us not be so self-righteous about how the world should be relative to an idea of the world that I've created for myself.
Well, there's nothing more humbling than getting to know yourself for real.
Exactly. And, I don't know, right? Every day I realize it. I'm like, oh gosh, I am not that enlightened.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. I'm like, wow, I had no idea.
I'm like, So I think that some people, because it was interesting you brought up that person said something about how can we talk about abundance and God's. This is a big question, because some people suggest that, like you brought up, and I'm with you, the good life is rooted in an experience, a moment-to-moment experience. Now, what does that look like in terms of our actions and how we show up in the world? That's the question. But starting with that moment-to-moment experience, that's where it is. That's where it lies. Because some people say the good life is not available to everyone, or life worth living is not available to everyone. I argue that it actually is. I'm not saying that that it is potentially available to them, I should say. But if we deny that with someone who's in a world of suffering, and we're like, well, your world is so bad that I'm not going to offer you any tools or anything that can help make your life better, because your world is so bad you can't have a good life because of that.
Yeah, sometimes with my students, when they raise this question, I say, and I'm with you, I believe the good life is available to all of us, but what I tell them, but it's going to cost you.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to cost you confronting yourself and your habits and the pain that maybe you haven't been willing to look at. It's going to cost you your time and your attention. It's going to take everything you have in your life to realize it, because in my worldview, we all have the same original nature, which is the word, for whatever reason, immaculate, has been coming up for me, but it's unconditioned, and there's a purity to who each of us is. But if we're not in the right conditions or circumstances, or somehow our motivations are clouded, there are um, all kinds of conditions that will give rise to that recognition, and we need to help each other. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's all the traditions say. We actually need each other for this enterprise that we're in. None of us. There may be some rare, enlightened beings that are self-realized, but for most of us, we're really needing the help of our good friends and comrades and brothers and sisters, to help us, because we can't do it on our own.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. I think it's absolutely there, but it requires a tremendous amount of commitment.
Mm-hmm. And to be when I have the privilege of, okay, for instance, I could share a little bit about my life story. Where I grew
Please
up,
do. Yeah, I'd like to hear.
lower working class.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes work was happening, sometimes it wasn't. Lower, I don't like to say poor too much, and know how poverty
Mm-hmm.
looks very different in different societies at different
That's right.
moments.
Mm-hmm.
But it was down there on the bottom, so near the bottom, socioeconomically and also educationally. And I didn't. There were things about the world I was not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to college for got an education and started learning all these different things, taking these multiple perspectives, getting a much, much broader perspective on the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Yeah.
Now I see where I can look at the younger Broderick, who didn't really have a large view of the world and
Mm-hmm.
didn't see
And not a
certain.
lot of exposure to different possibilities. Yeah.
No, now I was a good
Mm-hmm.
old Southern Baptist Christian, and there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of good to that for sure. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of good
Yeah.
involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a lot of things that I were suffering from, and I could have suffered from if I would have continued to have that same mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But I've developed myself. I've developed my understanding of the world. I have a much more sophisticated or complex way of looking at the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's my responsibility to take advantage of that and show that it could be something different.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is old gospel song, "This Little Light of Mine, I'm Gonna Let It Shine." I don't think people understand how deep that is.
Yeah.
Because it's like how do I allow my light to shine to the
Mm-hmm.
best of my ability, even though I got all kinds of things that are blocking
Mm-hmm.
it. I know that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
a fallible human being.
Yeah.
And that's constantly working on, unblocking those, what's the word I'm looking for? Unblocking the light, the
Mm-hmm.
potential light that can shine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's my responsibility to actually do that. To actually, now that I have this awareness, because when I allow my light to shine, I increase the probability or the likelihood of someone else doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely can't change my old self, or I cannot change certain dynamics that I might see when I go visit my family that I think could be resolved or it could be different. I can't impose that change. But what I can do is show up in a way that's different.
Yeah.
We're not talking about better than, none of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But just showing like, oh, you can be healthy at 50 years old. You can do certain things
Uh-huh.
or that I'm doing that
Yeah.
some people may not think is possible. Those little things.
You can listen better to your
You
family.
can listen better.
You can ask him some curious questions.
Bingo, exactly.
You can give him some praise and say, "Remember when you did this for me? That was amazing."
Exactly.
There's so much we can do.
That's exactly what happens right there, Diane.
Yeah.
I just visited my family a couple of weeks ago for 2 weeks. That's it. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to change. You should do something
Trying
about
to
your
get him to
diet.
be different.
Blah,
No.
blah. No, just
No.
being loving
Yeah.
and just seeing what happens. Like, wow,
Yeah.
you accept me for who I am.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm trying to. I'm doing the best I can to
Well,
do that.
it's one of the mistakes that we make when we first start to realize, oh my God, like I'm onto this now. It's like I just need to wake up and become more mindful and open my heart. And then all of a sudden I want everybody to be turned on to what I'm turned on to. And
Right?
then I stop doing the very things that I'm supposed to be doing. And instead I'm telling them how to be,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's yeah.
Yeah. So it's like,
That's
okay,
yeah.
take it easy,
Uh-huh.
just take it easy. What are they up to? How are they thinking about that?
Mm-hmm.
What more do they want to say about it? You know, I
Yeah,
hear you.
and being present with
Yeah.
someone who's suffering and near the
Yeah.
end of their life, and they're not going to
Yeah.
change their lifestyle at this point. But what can I do in that space of connection and being
Yeah.
present?
That's
Create
right.
moments of goodness
Yeah.
in that
Absolutely.
in that suffering.
Yeah.
I'm like, so I'm like, oh, I'm starting to see.
I
Just
remember my dad was in the hospital. I lost my dad in 2011. He had a long bout with cancer, but he was in the hospital at one point undergoing some surgery. And I had gone to the bookstore across the street, and I bought a little book to entertain him with, and it was just a book of facts, like that, like for example, that the American buffalo is not really a buffalo. That's a water buffalo. It's a bison. Like just dumb facts, right? So I come into my dad's room and I'm carrying this big book, and he looks at me because he knows I practice meditation and study Buddhism. But he looks at me with the book, and the first thing he says to me, "Oh God, I hope that isn't about your religion." I bought you some entertainment, and now you're worried that I'm proselytizing. I wasn't
mm-hmm.
even doing it, and I was accused of it.
Right.
Yeah,
But he can
yeah,
experience, I'm relatives who can experience that moment of good. That
yeah,
moment, I can see it, and in our conversations,
hmm,
and it's like, well, their lives are not going to necessarily, their lifestyle is not going to change. But
yeah,
I'm like, if, but me coming there, doing the best that I can to be a loving person, and if I'm actually showing up and being loving in those moments, that's good.
right,
That's a good
for
thing.
sure.
And what I see with the grandchildren and the parents, they're talking about it. They're
Yeah,
like, oh, Broderick is different,
mm,
not better. I don't get this better than a person. Oh, you
yeah.
can be.
That's not the point. Yeah,
That's definitely not it. I'm talking
yeah,
about doing things differently
hmm,
that can be healthier, that can increase the likelihood of having more of those moment to moment experiences that we call good.
yeah. I love
These,
that.
and it's like that's important. Now, when
Yeah,
we talk about this, those moment to moment experiences that are good, you
hmm,
mentioned something when you're talking about relating to other human beings and how important that is of surrounding yourself with people that can
hmm,
bring out of you.
hmm,
You mentioned the word virtues. So
hmm,
we're talking about the good as this moment to moment experience, but
hmm,
what does it look like in the world? What are those virtues? How
hmm,
does it express
hmm.
itself in our relationships with others?
Well, we're at a little bit a different we're a little bit different point in history, but I would say for most of us coming into some form of awakening, of becoming more conscious, of realizing our power to be loving, our power to transform situations for the better, requires some kind of fundamental ethical training. To really think about, you know, um, what we do with our speech, how we talk about others, the way whether or not we tell the truth, how we just, how we're careful about things. So um, in the Buddhist tradition, we definitely have periods of time where we study ethics. I mean, I studied ethics and philosophy. If you're a doctor, you're going to study medical ethics. If you're a lawyer, you're going to study legal ethics. If you're a judge, but I think in our culture at large, we used to teach civics, and we used to, there used to be ethical training in church, but a lot of people are not going to church the way they used to, and we can't really seem to agree on a civics curriculum, so we don't tend to really teach civics in the way we used to. So I kind of wonder about where people receive their ethical training these days, because sometimes it's easy to say, be honest, be kind, be generous, be patient, but it's really when those start to conflict. What if I'm honest and it doesn't feel kind? Like, which of those is it? It's when these values start to conflict and we actually have ethical dilemmas that we really need to be more thoughtful about it and be able to think a little bit more thoroughly about things. What are the long-term impacts? Everybody right now, we just have had the experience of dropping this series of bombs on Iran. And, just in my worldview, those kind of acts of aggression are probably, unless there literally is no other way to respond, it just seems like we should be using diplomacy, because diplomacy takes into account multiple perspectives. And we did have a treaty and it was working. And now we don't know where the uranium is, and we don't have inspectors anymore, and we have no agreements. And it might seem in the moment like the efficient thing to do, the most direct thing to do. But what are the long-term implications? What are all the unintended consequences, So I wouldn't have voted for it if it had been up to me, just because there's all kinds of unintended consequences. And making people your enemy just generally isn't the best way to go about things, in my view. And only because I am a bit of a fighter. So because I'm a fighter, I've kind of seen where it's gotten me, and I'm a little bit like, I think I'll just kind of dial that down a little bit, My son says to me when I get in one of those kind of moods, my son has Down syndrome, and he says to me, easy, windmill. Easy, windmill.
I love
but
that.
I mean, I've learned that the hard way, So when I see the country doing it, I'm going, I'm not sure that's a choice I want to make. But people have all kinds of ideas about what's good and what isn't. But in my view, the good demands those deeper contemplations. What is this act going to engender? What karma is generated out of this? How am I going to be paying for this 20 years down the road? So, and then I would also say, Broderick, and you probably agree, that at this time, in pluralistic culture, and DEI is taking a big hit. Diversity, equity, inclusion is taking a big hit out in the world right now. I certainly feel that I've experienced people who are doing the work of DEI in ways that to me felt oppressive.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, let's be honest. Yes.
But the task that where we're trying to go deeper in terms of equality, we're seeing that legislation hasn't done it, so we must have these internal biases. So then looking into our biases more deeply, exposing them to ourselves, looking at it directly into our own racism or our own sexism. Like those are practices, studying power dynamics, looking at how one up, one down is so innate to humans. And as you were saying, we constantly have to make somebody better and somebody worse. And we're trying to figure out how to use power in a way that doesn't end up in abuse. That's a basket of skills that are particular right now to our development. And those rest on ethical considerations. How do we treat each other fairly? What does equality really mean? These are really, really good, but it has a different flavor to it. It comes from a different dimension of our development, this basket of skills. Say, just straight up studying ethical conduct, for example. So different kinds of ethics are involved in the good life as well. We have to think about these things and contemplate them and enact them and pay attention to the feedback, and right.
Oh yeah. I love it. That's what this podcast is really trying to encourage.
Yeah.
It's well, you've studied philosophy, and I don't think people realize, well, at least the Greek philosophy that started with Plato and Socrates. We don't know what Socrates said, but read Plato. You ask me. But Socrates talking about this unexamined life is not a life worth living. And also this idea of eudaimonia and to live good or a good life essentially boils down to moral excellence, living a life of moral excellence and engaging in action that is ethical. And I see that relationship between engaging in a life as ethical and moral. There's a direct relationship between that feeling of goodness when we're really present, when we're really locked in. There's a direct correlation between that and ethical moral behavior. And that is a one way of practicing. Yeah, we can do individual meditation. I think it starts with asking ourselves that question.
Yep.
But when we engage in action in the world in a way that's moral, that's ethical, that's good, it really brings us into the present moment when we have those moments and those moments of interaction.
That's right.
And cultivating that and practicing that, I'm with you. We don't have a culture that does that right now.
Not right now.
We just don't. And I think
we don't really.
You can see it in everything, the way that the election went in 2024, but that's just the most obvious expression of a lack of moral education or ethical principles, values in our society. I don't say lack, but not enough importance given to that. And it requires doing what you're saying, asking those questions, examining our lives, examining our interactions, asking those questions, all kinds of questions from various perspectives, and being open to exploring those questions and trying to make sense out of those questions. I think when you have a training, something like a mindfulness, a meditative training, a contemplative practice, because the whole thing is about looking at yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Let me observe my experience and gain some insight. Ultimately, what is that doing? You're asking yourself question, what is happening right now? What is happening? What is leading me to behave in this way?
What's the impact that I'm going to have?
Exactly. How is it going to
and is it going to bring more life and goodness forward, or is it going to create more fear and more defensiveness? What's going to what's the outcome, you know?
I'm sorry.
Well, just quickly, I had a teacher who once said, be yourself, the world will give you feedback. You need to stay open to it.
I love it. That's good.
I thought so too. It was good, right?
That's so
good.
Trunk
for yeah.
I love it.
Just be yourself. But if you stay in relationship, you can study your own life and what the reactions that you've created are. You can just, if you're willing to pay attention.
Exactly.
And it doesn't mean that you're never going to hurt anyone. This is a kind of a hurting world that we live in. We hurt each other, as Bono says, and we hurt each other and then we do it again, you know? It's like, but that's also the basis for how we learn to forgive, which is the crown jewel of the Christian tradition, you know? Yeah.
Because when we do those things, it's like some barriers fall apart between us when we're interacting with people. I tell this story of, when I was young and I started to wake up to various ideas, and I would go home and, in your 20s and your 30s, you're just yelling at people basically. You should do this, you should do that, you should do that. And they're like all contracted. Like your dad was like, oh, there you go, I'm going to read something about your religion. And I'm like, no, you should do all this stuff. And I'm sitting up there like, I'm just trying to help, blah, blah, blah. And all these, I'm all upset. I'm like, wow, I'm just trying to do the right thing. I don't understand. Why are people not receptive? A lot of it was my delivery and
that delivery.
Delivery, and I thought
the delivery.
And I think you just made me think about this. When I'm now that compared to say with my mom and how I interact with my mom, and I could feel the tension, and she knows, she's like, I know you're trying to help, but it's just it's too much. It was too much for various reasons. But when I go now. And I'm with her, I'm not talking about none of that.
No.
And we have this interaction where it's just that moment. I feel it when I'm with my mom or my other relatives too. It's very meditative.
Oh, wow.
I'm just present. I'm not trying to suggest anything because I don't get to go home as often as I would like. And it's just all about the love, just being present with each other.
I don't look at. She must love her son so much.
She does.
I bet she does.
I don't look at TV, but they're all looking at TV. And I'm just sitting there. Oh, let's do. We're having this moment, looking at her TV shows together. Yeah. And it's like, oh, this is it. She's having moments.
She's
of
having
goodness.
Moments. Yeah.
Those moments of. Well, she feels good in that moment, even though she may be in physical pain for various reasons. But she's having a moment when she feels good. And I'm like, oh, that's what it's about.
Oh, that's
Yes,
beautiful.
if I'm available to share something about, say, diet, for instance, that can make your life a little bit better. If they are
Sure.
interested,
Look at
I'll
you.
be there. I'll be sure,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to try to
You might make
impose
her a
it.
nice meal. Huh?
I make you a nice meal and it
Yeah.
happens. She's like, oh, you're going to cook? I'm like, yes, but I'm not like, you should eat this, none of that.
Yeah, no.
And I'm watching, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the difference.
Isn't that awesome?
I'm like, that's where I think starting, I love how you started with the self. You're like, when we work on ourselves and we be that light and we start to work on awakening ourselves and be a light unto the world, don't worry about trying to transform nobody. Well, I've learned that for myself.
Yeah, it's like you've learned don't try to transform, and I've learned quit fighting. It doesn't
Yeah.
help you.
It does not help.
It doesn't
I'm
help.
stressed. We're not having a good moment because I'm like, why don't you do this? I love you so much and I want you to be healthy. I don't like to watch you in this situation. And it comes from a place of good intention.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
We're not having that moment. The love is there for sure, but we're not having that relaxed moment of goodness in each other's presence, because I want them to be something that they're not wanting to be right now in this moment.
Right. And we all hate being told what to do.
Exactly.
I mean, every one of us hates that. My Ram Dass, who is a spiritual teacher from he's probably in it. I don't know how old he is now, 70 or 80 or something. Did he die? Maybe
he passed.
died.
Yeah.
He passed. Yeah. He had a nice story. He had a student who was Jewish, but he was studying Buddhism. And Ram Dass said to this student, he said, "How is your mom doing with your Buddhism?" And the student said, "My mom hates my Buddhism, but she loves when I'm Buddha."
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I like that. It made me, yeah. It's how we show up, right?
Yeah,
it's how we show up.
Mm-hmm.
And not worrying about trying to convince the world to be something other than it. You can't. I've learned that way. I just can't.
It's not easy, though. I mean, what we're describing sounds so simple. And yet it's taken all of us our entire, as I was saying earlier, it takes your whole life. It's like you have an insight, you get so excited and you start practicing it and it makes a difference. So you want to spread the good news and then suddenly people don't like you anymore.
Right.
And you have to learn that. And now you have to learn you can't do that, and it just keeps going on and on.
Yeah. And I think it's a matter of being available in my own way of being for others who are interested.
That's right.
And when people are interested, then I'm available to do that, to share what it is that I've learned. I consider myself an educator, and I'm trying to share this stuff, and it's like you just got to keep learning. And the greatest educators are the greatest students. Yeah. You just continue to learn and keep learning, and when people are interested in what it is that you do, you're going to be much more available to them because of the work that you're putting in. But when you're getting frustrated or you're upset, I'm going to say me because it still happens. I'm upset about the world, for instance. I'm just like, this is really disappointing that the world is behaving this way. It hurts. It's painful to watch. But I'm learning that I can't force the world to change. I can offer what I do, but I can't. Getting upset that people are not listening or interested in my perspective, that's not going to solve the problem. That's not going to help the situation. What's going to help is like, you know what? I'm just going to be me and try to be a light.
I had an insight. Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech has been looked at and admired, and for so many years. But I made an observation that I wanted to share, which is, when he gave this speech, he started out in third person, and he was talking to this big audience about the debt that America owed the Black community, and that America had not made good on its promise to the Black community, and that it was time. And he was talking about America, and he was talking about, the third person and how this needed to be fixed. And then he brought the audience into you could say into the we space, or into the you and the me, the second person you, like us. He started to say, but in order for us to accomplish this, we have to hold ourselves to a very high ethical standard. Like we in the civil rights movement, we have to comport ourselves in a way that we don't lose the moral high ground. And as I read the story, Mahalia Jackson, who was his friend, was down on the front row, and it was going fine, but it hadn't roused the audience. And she said to him, "Tell them about your dream." She shouted to him, "Tell them about your dream." And when he shifted to speaking in his own first person, not saying what America needed to do, not saying what all of us need to do, but here's what I imagine and here's what moves me. And he started to speak about his dream from his own first person perspective. In other words, you just got done saying, being myself is really what I have to offer. When he offered that is when everybody joined and the energy just completely changed. He was speaking from his own heart about what he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I love how you started with, the good life starts with looking at our own selves.
Yeah, exactly.
And refining ourselves, polishing ourselves.
We can tell America what to do all we want, It's not that we shouldn't participate, but
yeah, we should participate, but we participate from that place of being a light unto the world to the best of our abilities. And
that's right.
People will be interested. Certain people will be interested, not necessarily the people you want to be interested, but you will find those who are interested in what it is that you're doing, and
and how you're being,
and how you're being. And that requires that self-reflective work and looking at ourselves very closely. And then I think I'm going to make sure I clarify this with you. When we do that, there's an organic. Now it needs to be in the we space where we're in relationship with other people. We need to be able to pick up on how people are responding to us. But do you agree that when we do that inner work and we work on our being really present and all those various qualities that we can cultivate when we do that, those we can give off a list of virtues and values, but don't they kind of, I'm careful saying automatic. I'm very careful with my word. We're a philosopher, got to be careful with your words. For lack of a better word, it's kind of organically, those qualities kind of organically come to life. And you can list off some of them already, but can you say a little bit more about that? Those qualities, if you think that they organically kind of come out of that, what are they?
Well, so in some ways, I think that one thing that happens is that when we've made a certain kind of peace with ourselves, we can actually forget ourselves. It's like, and we can become available. And when we forget ourselves and we become available to what's happening, naturally we may find that we're more generous.
Yeah.
Like naturally we may overcome our belief in scarcity and notice, like, look how much we actually do have, for example. And I want to be able to share that. Naturally we may suddenly kind of see through our graspiness and our need for more. And we might just find that we have fewer desires, but we have more powerful ones. I don't need this, another day of shopping on Amazon, another outfit. I don't, a new car. It isn't really that. What I really want is an open heart so I can contribute to the world. And that does seem to flower naturally. We find we become more patient. We find that we become more authentic, and we can challenge our friends, or we can share an honest opinion, or we can give someone feedback because fundamentally we're for them. Why would I not want to tell you what I really think? But I do it in such a way that they can feel that I'm offering it out of the bond that I have, as opposed to the competitiveness that I used to always be enacting. Let's see, what other virtues are there? There's a capacity to be quiet. That one's harder for me.
Me too.
But I can hang out with other life forms, and not need it all to be about the human. I can enjoy the plants and the animals and the water and all of that. Because the human drama is, I was thinking today, the problem with power is where there is power, there's always drama.
Yep.
And Trump is so, excuse me,
All
some
good.
politicians are so, the thing with power is it's unstable. Everybody's always trying to get it, right? So if you have it, someone's trying to take it from you, right? If you don't have it, you're trying to get it. So you can't be engaged in power and power exchanges and power conversations without drama.
Yeah.
It's so to step outside of that and just be quiet with the natural world. It's an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think partly that's why we're so entertained by politics right now, is because there's so much drama in it. It's
so much.
Yeah, it's just remarkable.
Remarkable. I'm like, Lord, this is no movie, no one in Hollywood could ever come up with anything like this. This is the strangest shit I've ever seen in my life.
And I tune into it because I think somehow that it's real and that I can prepare myself. But then I just realize, maybe a day not looking at it is not a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Lord. I love this because, because you in a lot of contemplative traditions, religious traditions, the emphasis is on cultivating the qualities.
Yeah.
Like those qualities that you mentioned. Do you, what's your opinion on that? What are your, like, even in Buddhism, they do this, particularly in Tibetan Buddhism, or there's a lot of emphasis on cultivating the qualities as though, like they're going to have an impact on, they feed each other. You work on yourself to get this, be in this present moment, and it can help influence the qualities that you express in the world.
Yeah.
If you work on the qualities that can help you, does that make sense? Does that help you make it be more present? Okay.
You're absolutely right. It comes from both sides. It's like we begin by trying to cultivate those qualities. And then as we quiet down and we become more attentive and we really pay attention to who we are and we drop all the self-centeredness, then we see that those qualities are also the end product of our practice. Yeah. So it's like we need them to begin with to practice, but then we see, these virtues are exactly what I was practicing for, but they were already here, but I had to practice to realize they were already here. That's what I hear you saying. That's a very, that really comports with the Buddhist tradition a lot, because they say the biggest problem is really is our self-orientation. So we're practicing, I'm trying to be a better person as Diane, where if I would just drop being so concerned about Diane, I would notice I was a better person. It just happens.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it requires us to, because of course it depends on our history, our temperament, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to do both,
I
to be able to do it all. And there are certain traditions, they just emphasize, quote unquote, the qualities. Mm-hmm. But then they're hijacked by the self, and there's no work on overcoming the self. I grew up Christian, so I've seen it, where I'm, even in most traditions, you see this: the people are identifying what being these qualities. I'm of this course. Thing, and it's ego and power dynamics and drama. All of that stuff start coming out of that.
I always say to my students, I always say, just think of it this way: like if you're in the hospital and you have a choice of nurses, do you want the nurse who's empty, or do you want the nurse who's doing good, taking care of you? Sometimes you can feel doing good coming at you, and you're like, no.
Right. Yeah. I'm available.
Yeah.
And then when I'm available,
I
organically do that which is appropriately good in this moment.
Yeah, because you're listening and you're asking questions and you're listening to the feedback that we already talked about. Yeah. Someone's telling you no, you actually hear it, Yeah.
Yeah, relationships. We're to live a good life, you can't separate yourself from others. It's just
no.
To live a life worth living is not necessarily just isolated.
Yeah.
Now, can people live isolated by themselves as ascetics? Sure. But historically speaking, even ascetics hung out with each other. You don't talk about that, but I'm like, ascetics hung out with each other. They were a small group, but they were interact with each other. So being in relationships and having
we're a very social species, and that's also where all of our struggles are.
Yeah.
But it's both. Usually if we're having a struggle in the relationships, we're having a struggle in our own interior with something that's and if we can get that resolved, it goes much better in relationship. And even if we still have disagreements, they don't have to be, they're not as damaging. They're just disagreements. They're not like, things that we have to fall on our sword over. Yeah.
So Dan, I love this kind of conversation because it's really a genuine exploration. It's not like, okay, here are a list of 10 rules to follow. It's not that. A life worth living is not that. A good life is what we're doing, is talking about it, exploring it, it's asking a question and seeing what's possible. You have more years of experience in meditation and doing all the things that you've done in the world. You have just more life experience than I do. And you're still exploring. I can tell in the conversation, the way you're having a conversation, like, this and that, and that's beautiful to me. I think it's beautiful, and I think that that's indicative of a good life, a life worth living, where we're not constantly, that's not the right word, we're continuously engaging with ourselves and in the world, and exploring and asking the question and experimenting and collecting the data from those experiments and then reflecting back on it. I'm like, I could have probably did that differently.
I think there was maybe a plan B.
But I learned.
I do that. I mean, I do replay things a lot when I come away feeling, disconcerted or, upset, or like something didn't go well. I like to think it over and think, what else could I have done? What could I have done differently? Because that's where all our power is. Yeah. Our power is always in our own ability to act or not to act, or whatever. What do you still hold from your early religious training that you feel still is, part of when you contemplate the good life and when you contemplate your own conduct and behavior? Like, what are some of those early teachings from Jesus that you still come?
Man. I think the love part, forgiveness, like you said, being kind, and I think the church experience is something powerful. At least the church that I grew up, Southern Baptist. We were talking about that when I was at home, so this is all fresh. The interactions, the community, the relationships. And if you haven't gone to a Southern, well, it's not like it used to be, but the singing. To me, that's singing, the preaching, the
preaching. Yeah.
All of it, I tell folks, I've had way more awakening or enlightening experiences growing up in the Southern Baptist Church than I did doing all the meditation, which I've had, powerful stealing experiences. But in terms of spiritual experiences,
oh my gosh,
it's nothing like it. And being in the community, in the singing and the music and what we call catching the Holy Ghost.
The method for uplifting the spirit.
Yes.
Wow.
Nothing like
There's no greater place to be to really experience lifting the spirit or inviting the spirit in is incredible. So that's the only thing where I think sometimes, when people really do know how to preach and they're not just telling people what to do, but they're enacting their deepest conviction and passion, it can be so moving.
Very moving. And I've gotten a lot out of it. I think to this day, the importance of creating, I think what the church can do, what a church service, a ritual does, it creates the space, it creates the boundaries, a container for spiritual experience, to connect with oneself, to be really present, to lock into something greater than yourself when you're connected with all these other people. People singing together, and there's people moving, they're bobbing their heads. And you go to a church when the preacher preacher preaching, and people, yes, Lord, and all this, and the call and response. It's a whole party going on in there, and
it's so incredibly energizing.
Oh man.
And so life-giving.
Yes.
And so affirming. Yes. And it's so helpful in terms of how we deal with suffering. So helpful.
Exactly. So how do I take all of that? And then I think having been in a community that really emphasizes, like a lot of the teachers in yoga and Buddhism and these ideas with that foundation, and the importance of community and the power of community.
Yeah.
It's nothing like
Yeah.
that. Doing stuff together. When we were at home, we were talking about revival, and back then they used to do revival all day, Sunday, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night,
Really?
Thursday night. Oh yeah. And boy,
Really?
all day. It'd be like morning service, afternoon service, and everyone is out eating food, and then there's a
And how many
evening
times
service.
a year was that happening? Was that
It was
happening
once a year.
once a year, and it was
But
like a
then,
week-long
oh
almost like a
yeah,
festival?
festival.
Almost?
But then in the summers, all the different local churches were
Wow.
engaged in that, so we would go to their revivals, and it was
Oh.
just.
Oh, wow.
But the beautiful thing, I knew
Wow.
I still, even when I go home after all these years, and I go and I see these people, I have a connection with them
Wow.
that some people I haven't seen 20 years, and I'll see them, and there's just connection because we connected in such a powerful space
Wow.
in the church. And that's the beauty of it. I'm not a Christian anymore for various reasons. I'm not a doctrinal Christian, but some of those Christian values, the positive parts of that were taught, is in me.
Yeah.
And not just the Christianity, but the experience of the ritual of going to being in a Southern Baptist church, rural church in the South. It could have been any religion, to be honest. But the experience of these Black folks, the energy that you can feel, you can sense the ancestors in the church. You can feel it. The songs, this longing for freedom, this longing to connect with a power greater than themselves. Christianity was the the thing that they knew they had.
Yeah, right.
But it could have been anything. Now, within those Christian teachings, there's a lot of good stuff in there that helped along that. But you can sense this power in the community of longing to be free. You can. There's these old songs that I still like to sing that that's directly related to this longing to connect with a power greater than themselves. But they can find it through themselves, through ritual, through music, through singing, through devotion, through the practice. So
Through the
it's just
gospel. Yeah.
through the gospel. Yeah. You can take Jesus out of the equation, to be honest, I think. And you can still have that power. And I take that home, and that's what I try to encourage in the world, the importance of ritual and being in community and celebrating life with others.
Yeah.
That's an important part of the good life, and that feeds into what you're talking about before, being really present in oneself and their body. And then when you have that part too, when you have that training and you bring those two together, not just those two, but it can be many things. But what I'm talking about, bringing those together, is really powerful, Diane, I think.
It's very helpful when people, because it's a suffering world. And people need their hearts uplifted, and they need to feel hope, and they need to feel energy coursing through their bodies, and to feel that they're not alone. Like all these things that you're describing are the things that, in a certain way, our prosperity has kind of made it so we don't need our communities in the same way, And people really need much more to be a part of that energetic power that you're talking about. That you it's very hard to. Sure, each of us can have a spiritual experience on our own, but to have, as you're saying, a weekly ritual or a daily ritual where you're with others and you feel your life force being supported, and your goodwill being supported, and your vision for the future being supported, in spite of all the heartbreaks and all the disappointments that everybody in the room is also experiencing. It's really important, because life has a lot of pain, and we don't necessarily know how to process our pain unless we have a strong community of practice and worship.
I love that. You again, it's so fresh. We're having a conversation when there's an old church that I grew up going to, and they built a new church, but they're trying to preserve the old church. And I was speaking with some of the older members of the church, and they were talking about their experience, and they were talking about how the church started, and how these folks walked miles to get to the church, how they started this church, that whole process. And it's exactly what you're saying. Man, the life around them was rough. Lynchings, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But they built this thing. They had a plate. They put, one of the folks that I talked to, they were saying, she said, those older folks, they put everything into this church because with all the hell going on around them,
oh my God,
they had moments when they would come together. They had a community they wanted to support. They were having a moment of goodness in their lives.
Absolutely.
Though they were having a taste of the good life through their experience of building this church institution and community, having the various rituals. And they were saying they were spending most of their, all day on Sundays at the church. But think about it. It makes sense. All the hell going on around them.
Yeah, you need some refuge.
They had
you need
refuge.
some sanctuary,
They created a sanctuary and they were able to, that made life worth living.
Yeah.
They had their community. They built that church. They came to do their worship. They were very devoted. I'm sure
they felt the genuine movement of the Spirit. They felt the reality of it, the direct experience of it.
And that made life worth living. Because it goes back to what you said in the beginning, the direct experience that you were talking about cultivating is a good life. Is an important aspect of the good life.
Yes, absolutely.
But you can create favorable conditions that are conducive to having that experience. And I didn't even think about it like this. Of course, I never planned anything to say on this thing, but it's interesting that this all came up because I think about those folks, the world that they were in, they were having that experience. That kept them going when they would create an environment that where they can tap into spirit.
It was completely born of what was needed.
Yeah, and it made life worth living.
Absolutely.
So
it allowed people to keep living, even.
Yeah. So, folks, when we talk about this question, I know I try to emphasize this a lot on this podcast that it's when we ask somebody the question of what the good life is, and the reason why I still like to use the word good life. Contrary to what you would typically hear about the good life, cars and houses and clothing and lots of money and blah, blah, blah. Have all the fame and money. I'm not saying you shouldn't have all that. That's great. But that's not what we're talking about. The good life can look very differently. People growing up in Jim Crow South, where people are literally getting lynched around them, they still found a way to make life worth living. And it wasn't being famous. It wasn't having a bunch of cars. It wasn't having the most high, it wasn't even being the most highly educated. It was none of that.
Yeah, that's
it
right.
was something much more deep and powerful. And I think that's what you highlighted today in this conversation, that the good life is available. It's available to us all. Yeah. And it doesn't have to look like what we're being marketed.
That's right.
Or what we've been, am I saying it right? What we've been advertised or marketed to believe.
Yeah.
No, that's not necessarily it. It's something else. It's ineffable. We've just talking about it and saying all these different things in this conversation. I just hope as you listen to this conversation, as you've listened to other conversations, that it inspires you to think and be reflective and go and have more conversations with others. To go and look at Diane's work. Just look up Diane. You'll see lots of great stuff there, and really encouraging us to keep this dialogue, this conversation going, because that's ultimately what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
Trying to do my part in sharing with the world that there's a possibility of more love in the world if we just get together and let's talk about it. And from when we talk about stuff, ideas come up, and then we can act on those ideas from those conversations. Well, thank you. I've appreciated being here with you. I've been like kind of nervous because, you're like, when you look up somebody and you don't know them directly and you're looking at their stuff, you're like, oh, this is a cool person. I was like, I'm going to get there on podcast. I'm all like nervous. I'm like, fool out of myself. Great. But thank you for being
my pleasure.
So real and
such a pleasure.
Genuine.
Thank you for sharing some of your influences in your past and what you care about.
Thank you. I wasn't planning, but it kind of came out in this conversation. Thank you for asking the question. Yeah. So before we sign off, are there any final thoughts you have for the audience?
I just want to tell the audience thank you for tuning in, because I think the very fact that you're listening means that you have a like-minded soul and a heart that's similar, and we just need each other in these times. It's not like, Broderick was saying, it's not that you can have your Lamborghini,
Sure.
but it's also nice to have your friends, your good friends. So thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. This is great. Looking forward to having more conversations with you in the future. I hope so, at least.
Me too.
Just knowing that you're part of my tribe,
Me too.
and I just love you. I
Yeah, I
do.
love you too. I love you too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.